Hello everyone, Zellerant here, and when I was streaming today with the release of Mishti, one thing that someone told me as the kit for Robella has come out, as we know is now an ice unit coming out for on the next one on the CN patch. So we are getting kind of that, we're starting to see our ice team start to solidify, and so now we have the kit here and kind of seeing how she's going to work. We've seen it in the fight, but we have not seen all of the skills and what they actually do. And so I found on the Discord kind of a good breakdown of it. Now, this doesn't have the numbers like we always get. This is kind of just the initial part of it. But I thought we'd just kind of go over this real quick and kind of give my thoughts on how I think she's going to play within the team. It's going to be really tricky. Just after we looked it over on stream, and one big thing is it's going to be really tricky to understand how good she's going to be until we actually get the numbers. But overall, I am liking what I see for the Ice team. We'll just realistically need those numbers to really tell how valuable she's going to be. And so first, we'll just kind of go through everything she has here. And so first thing I want to look at is her passive right off the bat. So passive is at the end of action, gains Confectance Index. So she's going to be able to gain Confectance Index naturally just from her passive. I don't know what the costs are going to be on her skills, but when we get into those, it kind of looks like there's going to be a rotation you're going to want to do with them. So there's probably going to be a mix of needing Confectance Index and some turn cooldown to make you cycle through them. She's actually going to be like Mishti to an extent, where she's actually going to want to use basic attacks on some occasion when we see here in her passive here. But she gains the Confectance Index after using Frost Erosion, which Frost Erosion, we'll get to that later in her kit, but after using Frost Erosion, consumes all deep insight stacks on the target, and the deep stacks she puts on them with another one of her skills here, or the deep insight here, and then gain the same number of stacks of weakness detection for self, increasing the damage multiplier of basic attacks and ultimate. The big thing here is it specifically mentions basic attacks, so it makes me think she's going to want to utilize basic attacks, and you'll see a little bit more in her kit that references basic attacks, making me think she's going to be like Mishti in that extent, where some occasions it may be useful to actually do a basic attack. And then you have, if the number of stacks of weakness detection is more than 2, basic attacks deal ice damage instead of crit for self. And so now, like Mishti can convert her basic attacks to corrosion, she can convert hers to ice and increases her own crit rate. Now, weakness detection is going to be, I feel like, be pretty decently easy to get this up to 2. It'll depend on what you're fighting, but it's going to pair very well with Macchiato. And the reason is because deep insight stacks, which you are converting to weakness detection, you put on the target with this first skill here. S1 applies heart connection for all allies. After skill used, gain extra command. So this is a skill she can use and then immediately act afterwards. My guessing is when you're in your rotation, you might not be able to use your second skill or your ultimate, so this may be paired with the basic attack on occasion. That's my guess so far, just because of the extra command there. But what Heart Connection does is when those allies that have it deal ice damage, it increases the attack. And then after the holder uses that attack or ambush against the enemy, Robella applies Deep Insight to it, which is that buff it mentions down here. And it deals additional damage after skill use. So Deep Insight, so she's going to start building up these stacks of Deep Insight as your teammates attack doing ice damage. If you think about Macchiato can do 3 basically. If you have V1 or even V0, do 3 with her support actions when she's attacked, as well as when she does her normal attack that does ice damage. So there's 3 from her. You've got Dush, who can do some ice damage. You have Suomi, who can do ice damage in multiple ways. So this is something that I could see you get a lot of stacks of, and it's really going to come down to the multiplier, because when you look at what Deep Insight itself does, at the end of action, if the holder is near Robella, so she's going to want to be close to them, receives Frost Erosion from Robella, dealing ice damage. So at the end of action, she's going to deal that Frost Erosion. And if you remember down here on her passive, after using Frost Erosion, it converts those Deep Insight stacks to weakness detection. So from what it seems like is, if you're fighting like a boss is where it's going to probably be the most important, is you're going to want to put all the stacks you can on the boss as much as possible. And so you have her do this heart condition, it gets on your allies, and then you do all the ice damage you can, stacking up all these deep insights. It comes to the enemy's turn. Your Macchiato is going to do her counter attacks when the enemy attacks. That's going to put some stacks on there. And then when the boss is done, Then it's going to trigger this Frost Erosion, which is going to do a lot of damage to the enemy. And then it's going to convert to those stacks of weakness detection, which then very easily you should have more than 2, which then converts her basic attack and increases crit, among other things. So overall, that seems like it's going to be fairly easy to rotate so far. I mean, like I said, we have to see numbers and all that kind of stuff. But depending on how much that stacks up, this may be a core part of her single target damage in her kit there. Then we go from there, we have her skill 2. Robella gains Radiant Sublimation, increasing damage dealt by self, and upgrades Heart Condition in Deep Insight to their enhanced form. And when they're in their enhanced form, increases their damage multipliers. After skill usage, Robella gains Frost Barrier. So this is the one that gives her the Frost Barrier. And in the rotation, like I said, this one's actually probably the first one you're going to throw out because it upgrades Heart Connection and Deep Insight, which is these two top up here. So it upgrades those, increases their damage, and then she gives herself a barrier. So you're already kind of starting to see what her potential rotation is here with just that. So we know it's got some kind of multiplier, and you can increase it here. Then after that, we have the next one, which is her ultimate. It deals AoE ice damage in a fan-shaped area. And we've seen that one kind of in the fight. So it's going to be like fanned out in whatever angle or direction she's pointing there. And that's pretty much it on the ultimate. I don't know if I'm hoping it's going to be doing massive damage. There's not much details on that, but it may be that it has more stuff that increases attack. Because if you look down here, that weakness detection increases the damage multiplier of both basic attack and ultimate. So where I'm kind of starting to see the rotation is you do your skill 2 into your skill 1. After doing your skill 1, you use basic attack. On the next turn, after the enemy has attacked and their turn is ended, and you've got weakness detection on her, and then you get that increased ultimate damage as well as other parts of her basic attack. Then you roll into her ultimate from there and just do probably a ton of damage. It's my guess is going to be the rotation. And then from there, maybe you rotate back into skill 2 to skill 1, back to ultimate. And then you're going to mix in basic attack with your skill 1 after getting an extra command. That's the kind of the rotation I'm seeing her have without the numbers, without the cooldown and confectants index costs. We'll just have to see when we actually get that stuff. So that is her kit. It's fairly simple. In how it works. It kind of has it specifically states when dealing ice damage. So she's going to be very reliant on the ice team. So if you're not going into the ice team, if you're not going to invest in Macchiato, or you don't have Macchiato, if for some reason you skip Suomi or you don't have Dush, I think she's going to be a little bit on the weaker side because you're going to want to be constantly dealing ice damage to the enemies to hopefully build up a ton of these stacks on the enemy there. So we have that. Then we have her fixed keys here. When allies with Heart Connection use an active attack or ambush, which ambush is Macchiato's attack after enemy action, apply defense decrease. That is going to be huge because now you can actually get a defensive decrease on the enemy within the ice team. That one's going to probably be a must-have one on your ice teams with her. Very easy to do that. And then you have this one, which she can increase her attack 2 on her fixed key 2. And then on the third key here, after using a basic attack, gains weakness detection. I don't know how useful this one's going to be because it gives her weakness detection which increases basic attack and ultimate. But I feel the way the cycle's going to be on her kit, we'll just have to see how valuable that's going to be, but it feels like you're going to always have that on her, unless there's a very short period of time if you have it. Maybe it's one turn, and maybe there's some kind of way you can utilize that to get some kind of buff, but I don't know on that one. That one seems like that one's going to be a skip one for now, but I'm going to guess there's going to be some value to it. Probably, I'm guessing that might be tied to if you want to take her outside of the Frost teams, or not have a full Frost team, so maybe her and Suomi. It might give you the ability to get that 2 stacks without having the entire ice team. But other than that, I don't see that one being very valuable in this so far. Key 4, if Robella or allies with Heart Connection deal ice damage towards enemies with a shield type effect, increases shield penetration rate, so that's the numbers, and increases damage dealt. I think this is going to be extremely useful on certain bosses. I'm going to guess there's bosses where it's like, man, we need to penetrate the shield. Bam. I mean, it's going to be situational because it's going to be only under certain situations. But right there, now you have a team built around doing shield penetrating damage right there. The whole ice team can do that. Then you've got key 5 if Robella is standing on allied frost tiles after using basic attack or ultimate gains extra movement. I think this one is going to be extremely useful. It's kind of, you get that same situation, which I like Diane for, is you can have someone like, you can have Suomi go out there and throw ice when she does her shield. You can have her put ice that is in an exposed area by the enemies, and what you can now do is you can have her actually go where she's behind the enemies, so she doesn't have to worry about cover or anything, and just directly hit them. After she does that, then she can use that additional movement to take cover. So I think that one could be useful as well in specific scenarios. I think that one's situational, but I do think it will be extremely useful in certain cases. And then you have key 6. Before using Frost Erosion, dispels a portion of the enemy's buffs. So Frost Erosion, as we already know what that's doing. So that's a very easy one to trigger as well. But it's also going to be situational, depending on your team comps, on whether you need her to be dispelling buffs. But it's nice to have the ability available to be able to use. So overall, I think her keys are pretty good. I mean, it seems like your main two are going to be key 1 and key 2. And then situational on pretty much all the others, depending on whatever you're doing. It'll be situational on the other third key. And then you have her common key. So this one is when the holder has shield effects, increases elemental damage dealt. So we don't know the numbers on this one. I'm hoping it's a 10%, but it's probably going to be your 7% you see. But this is going to be a generically good one on any team that pretty much, like any team that has Suomi. If you have Suomi, this thing's going to be easy to keep active on whoever has it. And so pretty decent common key there. It's going to be mostly probably used in the ice team, but right now Suomi still is the best sustain. So unless you're utilizing, say, the hydro team when Springfield comes out, or you have Cinerisi or Sinia for burn team, Suomi's kind of the one I throw in all my teams at this point still, so that one's always going to be available. Now, when she comes out, who knows? The order could be different. We could have more sustains of all that, so it might only really be pertinent to the ice team. But overall, that one looks good. And so just kind of looking at the kit without the numbers, I've seen some people are saying it's kind of underwhelming. I think some people might think it's underwhelming because we don't have the numbers. It is kind of simple in what it does, because I think you can kind of visually see the rotation you want to do with it. But it's going to just be, you just use your S2, you get you basically get this buff on here to enhance heart connection and deep insight, which will increase their multipliers. I don't know how valuable this is. She's in the ice team, so what is the difference between her putting her own frost barrier on herself versus having Suomi do it? Because if you have Suomi, I mean, Suomi's shield's good. I mean, unless it stacks somehow. But even then, that's less value. The big thing with skill 2 is enhancing the heart connection and deep insight, so you can do a lot more damage. Because then you have that. I feel like you lead in this skill 1. You do that. It deals big damage, or it puts a bunch of the buffs on them when your enemy or your teammates are attacking with ice attacks. And then you lead that into a basic attack. And then on the next turn, you're leading into your ultimate, and then you just do that rotation over and over again. Especially if you're fighting a boss, I feel like that's going to be specifically how she works. But who knows? I mean, the cooldowns and all that may not work that well, and so maybe key 3 becomes important to make sure you can get those 2 stacks. I don't know on that. Maybe once you start looking at her dupes, because that's the thing we don't have here. We do not have what her dupes provide. Maybe that's the rotation if you have like V1. If you don't have V1, maybe you have to cycle it a little bit differently so that it's a lot weaker. Or who knows? So we don't have the dupes information yet. The only thing that it's fairly simple. I mean, she's kind of a mix of she's a sentinel. So she is going to be a damage dealer. So it makes me really think Frost Erosion is going to do a lot of damage. But she's also a buffer / debuffer. She's a support with these keys here. So she is going to be extremely useful. And I think if you're wanting to go ice, she's going to be a must pick up just for what she provides there. This alone, plus all the damage she can provide. And you have your Macchiato doing damage. Suomi, hopefully Suomi's expansion key also helps her do some more support to the team as well. And then you're sitting pretty good. I think Ice Team is going to be looking good. I don't know how much this is going to bring them up in terms of the meta, in terms of the ice team versus, say, a mono hydro versus a mono corrosion versus a mono burn team. But we'll just kind of have to see when that comes out. But overall, I think it's not too bad. But yeah, just let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. And if you like my content, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.